Good morning, everyone. The designated resource person for the day was actually Prashant Dahal sir, and due to personal reasons he couldn't come, so I had to fill in the slot at short notice. Anyways, he's done a very extensive PowerPoint which I'll be sharing with you. And like sir said, the practical implementation of SFR, it becomes a little bit easier because it seems everyone is from the account service. So अब कति चिजहरु तपाईलाई थाहै भएको छ. So उहाँले strategy power presentation बनाउनु भएको छ. Let's go through it briefly and then let's have a discussion to clear whatever doubts that come up. I think that's the way we'll move forward. And thank you very much, sir, for inviting me here to to have this wonderful interactive session with the staff. Thank you. Structure of Sikkim Finance and Account Service, Sikkim Subordinate Service. We'll go through the slides, and if there is any questions, I think instead of holding it back till the next session, we can talk about it as and when the problems arise. So this is the structure of the Sikkim Finance and Account Service. With the Controller of Accounts, the Principal Director, the Additional Director, Chief Accounts, Joint Director, Senior Accounts Officer, Accounts Officer. I think this is pretty clear to everybody. And then this is the structure of the Subordinate Account Service, where at the hierarchy is, at the top of the hierarchy is the Senior Accountant, then there is the Accountant, Junior Accountant, and Accounts Clerk. The divisions of the Finance Department, there are 8 sections: the Budget, Accounts and Loan, Finance Commission, Internal Audit, Local Fund Audit, there's Pension, GPF, GIS, CPF, there's the Treasury Pay and Accounts Office, there's Lotteries, and finally there's the Commercial Tax Division. So when it comes to the preparation of accounts, it's basically the receipts and disbursements, surpluses and deficits. This is, I think, pretty clear to everybody, right? Form of accounts and then the principle of accounting. The accounting system followed by the government is the cash-based accounting. It's a single entry system which is maintained through the documents in the office, which is your contingent audit register, your salary audit register, your work registers, your cash book. Everything is on cash basis. We don't follow a accrual basis accounting or a double entry system. So actually it is much simpler for us, it's easier for us. We don't have to be require very specialized knowledge, for example, usage of tallies, which is required in the private establishments. So I think we have it very easy. The currencies in which accounts they have kept, the annual accounts, this is not really relevant to us anyways. So this is the division and structure of accounts and the consolidated fund of accounts. I mean, basically the expenditure that the government makes is bifurcated into the revenue section and the capital section. On the revenue section, there is the revenue receipt, which is the tax revenue, non-tax revenue, and the grants in aid that the government receives. From there, the expenditure that is made on the revenue account is basically made for social services, the general services, economic services, and the grant in aid. From the capital head of accounts, there is the capital receipts. Capital receipts are basically receipts, funds received from the Government of India for implementation of projects. The expenditures that are made are for social services, building infrastructures, general services, economic services, and grants in aid. These are basically for creation of assets, which help us function as a entity.
The final component of the capital section is the public debt, where the government takes loans and advances from, whether it be from banks, whether it be from the central government, for the purpose of execution of projects. The contingency debt. There are recorded transactions connected with the contingency fund set up by the government of Sikkim under Article so and so of the Constitution and the Sikkim contingency fund. There shall be a single major head. Now for the management of expenditures as well as revenues, we have heads. I think we are all aware of that, right? We have 15-digit expenditure heads, and then we have 8-digit revenue heads as well. Now, I think we are aware of this as well, the components of the major head. The 15-digit major head represents 4 digits functions of the government. Sub-major head, another 2 digits after break, that is represents sub-functions. The minor head represents programs of the government. The sub-head represents the schemes. The detail head represents sub-schemes. And the object head represents the actual expenditure. We've been given an example. For example, for judiciary, I think everybody is handling the expenditures of judiciary, and this is the head that we are mostly concerned with, right? So it's 2014-2014, which is the administration of justice. 00 sub-major head, administration of justice. 102 minor head, High Court charge. In this point where the charge expenditure is shown, do you know the difference between the charge and the voted expenditure? Why is judiciary a charged expenditure? The reason the High Court expenses as well as the Raj Bhavan expenditures are called charged is this: there cannot be a discussion regarding these budgetary provisions in the assembly. Only the voted, that is for the rest of the budget, there can actually be discussion in the assembly. So coming next to the subhead, 60 is your establishment, 00 detail head is establishment, and finally 01 the object head is your salaries. Now this is the classification of the revenue receipts. How many revenue heads do we have with the judiciary? Is anyone aware? One would be 800, I think. 2. 00. Okay. And what would be the details of the revenue head? Okay, 4 fees and 5 fees. That is the only head. You don't have any called other receipts. 800. That is not the okay. Anyways, so basically the revenue receipts, what has been enumerated here is the revenue receipts. It usually pertains to a specific department. For example, 4001599. Between these heads, the capital expenditures collected from the departments are categorized. So for each department, there would basically be a different head. So this is the compilation of state accounts. I think we are this is how we work. There is the DDO prepares and submits bills. Before the DDO submits, it's usually you take approvals in the department, and then what we do is we get the sanction orders, and then we send the bill for the finally the signatures of the DDO. The DDO then sends the bills to the CPO. The CPO passes the bills. They generate the vouchers. Those vouchers are again are the numbers that are recorded by the AG office. So there is a compilation of accounts at the CPAO. then they go to the AG's office for the secondary compilation. And there the heads are booked, the detailed booking as well as the major head booking is done. And against this compilation, the quarterly reconciliation has to be done by the department, which I think a lot of you have been involved with. The reconciliation of accounts was usually physical, where we had to go to the AG's office, and after the pandemic this has changed, and I think it has become easier, it becomes quicker for us. So revenue receipts and capital expenditures. Now the revenue receipts would either be tax revenue, non-tax revenue, and the grants and contributions. Tax revenue would be the state's own tax revenues, the state GST, state excise taxes on sales and trades, shares of proceeds of taxes, and CGST, IGST, corporation tax, service tax. For non-tax revenue, it would be the power, interest receipts, miscellaneous general services. For the grants and aid and contributions, it would be the grants received from the central government for the central sector schemes, for the centrally sponsored schemes, and as well as other schemes. And capital receipts would be disinvestment proceeds. By disinvestment proceeds, it would usually be state assets that are sold to the public. For example, when it comes to Government of India, when we talk about disinvestment of LIC, that means the equity of the government would be sold to the public for garnering revenue for the government. Now the revenue expenditure and capital expenditure. Revenue expenditure is used to meet day-to-day running of the organization. That is of recurring nature, which happens every month. That is why your salaries is a revenue expenditure, your office expenses are a revenue expenditure. Whereas the capital expenditure is expenditure that is of a specific nature. It's usually for the creation of assets. Now the charged and voted. We already talked about what a charged expenditure is and what a voted expenditure is. Now sources and applications of fund. Where rupee comes from? It comes from tax revenue, grant in aid or contributions, non-tax revenue, or public debt. And where does the rupee that we get go? It goes to the disbursement of salaries, payment of pensions, or servicing the interest, and other activities. So this is our Bible, the Sikkim State Finance Rules 1979. Despite, in my personal opinion, being a little bit outdated, we are bound to use the Sikkim Financial Rules. There are a lot of because of the rules being so old, and then there being a few amendments, limited amendments, I think work is underway to revise the Sikkim Financial Rules, but then till we get the revised rules, we are bound to use whatever is there in Sikkim Financial Rules. But I still feel, there has to be a lot of application of logic. We have to interpret the rules being broad-minded and in the interest of the government. What I feel is, as the occupational hazard for us accounting personnel have been to generally be a little negative. Whenever a file or proposal comes, we tend to say, no, this is not possible. This is because this rules. I think we should be a little bit positive with our interpretation of the rules, because we are here to help public work and not create a bad rapport, whether it be with the personnel, with our colleagues in the department. Anyways, so let's get into what the Sikkim Financial Rules says. It came into force with effect from 1975. Okay. Now the definitions. The budget, also known as the financial statement, it shows the estimated receipts and expenditure of the government. This is the finance components of the government without which the functioning of the government would be difficult. Everything has to be budgeted. We have to know what our revenue is, and we can make our expenditure only after knowing our revenue. Now the next competent authority means the government or any other authority to whom the relevant powers may be delegated by the government. Accounts officer means the accounts officer, assistant director. I think this is pretty clear. I think we can actually, I'll actually share this presentation with everybody so you can use it as a future reference also. But then I think it's not very helpful if I go on reading out the definitions. This is what is already there in the SFR. Everybody has seen the SFR in my hope. Drawing and disbursing, we all know what accounts officer is, we know who the drawing and disbursing officer is. If anybody has a problem where I'm skipping by the presentation, please raise your voice. Head of the department is also clear to us. Head of the office is the next in power. And Rule 57 of the SFR states that for sanctioning purpose, head of the department have powers to declare with the concurrence of finance department any gazetted officer or subordinate officer as the head of the office. So this is also clear. In the judiciary here, who is the head of the department and who is the head of the office?
We only have the head of the department.
Okay. There is no delegated head of office. Okay. Who is the head of the department? So everything has to go to him. No power is delegated. So financial advisors, that would be us in the department. Whether it be from the subordinate services or the superior services, we are entrusted with the enforcement of the Sikkim Financial Rules. So, I mean, we have to take a stand, we have to write what we feel is correct without succumbing to any pressure. Despite me being contradictory to what I said earlier and having a positive interpretation on everything, it is also our responsibility to ensure that the work being done in the department is according to the rules. Now the resource controlling officer would be the head of the account section, or who is the resource controlling officer at the AO. Okay. And then the drawing and disbursing?
Individual office we have individual.
So doesn't that become a little difficult to... Okay. So, but then that is what is happening with now with the Pranali coming up and then everything being systemized and being done. The Pranali itself is called the system. So whether it be your resource requisition, whether it be assigning of expenditure heads, all goes through the RCO. So the RCO has work of coordinating with all the sub-offices. The receipts of government money. The head of the department office DDO shall be ensure that all revenue receipts and other due to the government are regularly and promptly assessed, realized and credited to the relevant head of accounts. So as you said, you already have you only have two heads of accounts against which you receive fund. The departmental receipt accounts should be compiled monthly and original documents received in proof of the amount have been credited to the government. This would be the DRs that are collected and compiled, which is again reconciled with the AG's office. Is the reconciliation being done for the revenue receipt? So any amount due to the government shall not be left unrealized without sufficient reason. No claims to revenue or other dues to the government shall be remitted or abandoned without the sanction of the finance department. Procedure for paying money into the government account shall be through challan in the prescribed form. The refund of revenue sanction shall be regulated by the orders of the competent authority. All of this is pretty clear. Things to be discussed. Challan in the prescribed form is complete in respect with all correct classification of account as per the estimate of receipts. Is this understood? The challan that is being prepared, therein you mention the revenue head, the 7-digit or 8-digit heads that has been assigned is mentioned there, and it's usually the accounts officer signing the challans or the concerned officers in each office if there isn't an accounts officer. There is quarterly reconciliation of revenue receipts with the pay and accounts office and the office of the accountant general. This is again very clear, and I think this is being done on a quarterly basis, and everybody must be very familiar with this process. The next would be the revenue realization with reference to the revenue receipts estimates. Maintenance of deposit register for civil and criminal courts, deposits to its reconciliation with the office and gain accounts. So is this being done as well? I am not really familiar with the deposit register for civil and criminal court because it is specific to the judiciary. Okay. So the next is budget grants and appropriation. Every year the head of department and subordinate authorities concerned shall submit to the finance department detailed estimates and other materials as sought by the finance department. While submitting, the following points are to be noted. The nominal roll prepared is complete in all respect. This has become very easy with the use of Pranali. I think the judiciary also has submitted the nominal rolls through Pranali. Okay. And all the offices have done the individual work, or is there a lot of pressure on the head office? Everyone has done it. So everybody is familiar with Pranali. The salaries or details of regular employees, MR, ad hoc, consolidated time scale, etc. are correct, including allowances. The requisition of fund under salaries and wages heads are accurate so that there is no shortfall during the financial year. Right now, what Director Sir said initially, that a lot of money was budgeted for salaries, and then there was a problem because you got a notice from the AG's office. Usually what happens is when you are budgeting for a future event, for instance induction of new people to the office, which didn't happen in that case. So I think the amount of fund surrender was substantial, was it? What was the figure that Director Sir was talking about? The problem raised from the AG office? In crores? Lakhs? Okay. So actually what should have happened is the concerned drawing and disbursing officer should have foreseen that there is, unless the money was given through supplementary grants, in which case the surrender is not possible. The drawing and disbursing officer should have intimated to the head of office that there is going to be a savings, and the same money should have been surrendered to the finance department. This would be an ideal situation, but in case if there was a lot of work pressure or there was some sort of omission or commission on account of other works being done in the department, what usually happens is the AG office, they issue an appropriation accounts. It's a big size paper that is issued in the month of July every year. So even if that appropriation accounts, this is different from the reappropriation of accounts. Annual appropriation accounts, which is issued by the office of the AG, if you had just received that from the AG, and the reason for savings, if it had been included there, it makes your work much easier. The reservation that the director actually had regarding the savings was, once the AG office pulls you up for any sorts of savings or excesses, if the amount is of a substantial nature, the figures goes to the Public Accounts Committee. Public Accounts Committee is again headed by the Chairman, Public Accounts Committee, and this body is housed at the Assembly. So the AG office is answerable to the Public Accounts Committee. Your heads of departments are answerable to the Public Accounts Committee. So to save face, the director basically doesn't want to embarrass the head of departments to stand in front of the Public Accounts Committee over a meager figure. So even I think, was it done? Was the appropriation accounts taken out? Was the reply made to the AG AG's office? Was this done?
We have just received the quotation.
In December?
Yes, sir.
No, I'm not talking about the quarterly appropriation accounts. I'm talking about
Last
the,
year, sir, 2021.
how can you miss it out? It should be done in July itself.
We just received in WhatsApp from Legal Service Authority. We have not received.
Okay, so that is the problem. Since you received it in December,
Yes.
that has already been included in the report. You did not get a chance to reply. So that has become a cause of concern. That is why I think, sir, during the introduction itself, he highlighted that piece. Anyways, I mean, the concerned officers should make it a habit that in July, even if you do not receive the documents, please go to the AG's office and collect the annual appropriation accounts. So, where were we? The total under the major head should be rounded off to the nearest 1,000 rupees. This is basic enough. Estimates of fluctuating charges may be based on the average of the corresponding actual expenditure for the 3 preceding years. This is basic also. No item of expenditure should be included in the estimates for which specific sanction of the general authority does not exist. Sectoral allocation figures as released by the planning department are to be correctly entered in the budget estimate. The requisition of funds under CSS 100% as well as the 9010 are to be supported by the administrative approvals and sanction letters of the Government of India. This poses a little bit of a problem because what the FRBM Act tends to say is there should not be an overestimation of your budgetary provision. But then working with the departments, what happens is we are not really sure what schemes are going to be sanctioned by the central government and what are not going to be sanctioned. So I think it would be safer to quote a higher figure. I mean, the documents that have been submitted to the ministries, those would typically be the figures that should be included. Because the other problem would be if you receive funds from the Government of India and then the same provision has not been made in the budget. That poses a lot of difficulty because you cannot incur an expenditure without an existing budget head. Corresponding matching state share is to be provided from the sectoral allocation. A token provision of 1,000 may be provided under budget head where there is an anticipation of funds later in the financial year. Okay, so I think this again is a very important point. Wherever we are seeking funds or where we have not received the sanction of the Government of India that we are going to receive money, to be on the safer side, it's better to open a budget head and have at least a token provision of 1,000 rupees. Because if you have this token provision, it gives you a lot of operational flexibility. Wherein suppose you have received, where you've given a token provision of 1,000 rupees and under A scheme, but then money has been received and there is another scheme, there is a B scheme where there is a lot of provision, but then money was only received from the Government of India for A scheme, at least you have the flexibility of reappropriation. So this token provision, though it looks like a small thing where it just talks about 1,000 rupees, but then I think this is a very, very important concept that should be kept in mind while preparing your annual budgets. The other, for others like opening up of new budget heads, liabilities, etc. to be first discussed with the budget section and the finance department with all the supporting documents and later the approved amount to be included in the budget estimate. Scrutiny of estimates. The finance department scrutinizes the receipts and expenditures of every department. Then consolidated it into self-contained budget in the prescribed form, exhibiting receipts and expenditure under major heads to show at a glance the financial position of the government for the year estimated as compared with the position obtaining in 2 preceding years before presentation to the legislature. The consolidated budget as passed by the legislators shall show separately the sums required to meet the charge expenditure, the voted expenditure, and distinguish between the revenue account and that of the capital accounts, loan by the government, repayment of loans, etc. Example of charge expenditure, emoluments of the allowances of the governor, the salary and allowances of the judges and the high court. So basically, this is actually, we talk about the three pillars of democracy, wherein you have the judiciary, you have the legislature. So, and this is basically, I mean, the reason that the expenditures of the governor and the judges are not voted and they are charged is for the purpose of independence of the pillars of democracy. Things to be discussed. The budget estimate should be realistic. I mean, this is basic. Persistent savings is not good budgeting. But again, we are compared with so many pressures in the department wherein you are supposed to budget for unforeseen or anticipated expenditures that are to be made. The midterm review of the budget estimate with the progress in the expenditure, any forecast of savings may be surrendered to the budget section. Like we talked earlier about the salaries, ideally it should have been surrendered. Provisions that cannot be profitably utilized should be surrendered. Rush of expenditure, particularly in the closing month of the financial year, should be regarded as breach of financial regularity and should be avoided. While this is being stressed, I think practically this is a very, very difficult proposition because as accounting personnel, we can only process the bills that have been submitted to us. And there are a lot of instances where there is a lot of delay on the part of the other sections of the department, whether it be the administrative sections, the engineering section. What usually happens is the bills are submitted to the account section somewhere around closing of the February, and then there is a lot of pressure for you. You cannot scrutinize the bill properly, you cannot, and there is the other pressure that is given to the account section is there is delay from the account section. हामीले त काम गरेको नि त्यहाँ अकाउन्ट्समा पठायो अकाउन्ट्सले खै के पर्खेर बसिरहेछ अब those sort of perception is there, but then I think we have to take a very clear stance. We have to intimate our head of departments in writing, not just verbally. You have to write to them. You have to ask your drawing and disbursing officers if, in case, because the subordinate staffs are usually the ones reconciling the expenditures, and when you reconcile expenditures, when you make your monthly expenditure reports, you actually know where you stand. I mean, the amount of balances left. And if this is intimated to the concerned officer in a timely manner, it is the responsibility of the officer to take this up with the head of departments. They should say that expenditure is not being made in a timely manner and there is going to be a lot of pressure for which we should not be blamed in the case of the fund being lapsed, for us not being able to submit bills on time. The procedure for release of funds under CSS via PFMS module. Is there centrally sponsored schemes or central sector schemes in the judiciary? No. Okay. Do we want to talk about it? We don't want to talk about it. No. Okay. Now the expenditure and payments of money. Essential conditions governing expenditure from public accounts. Subject to the provisions of Article 266 and 267, Section 2 and 283, Section 2 of the Constitution. No authority may incur any expenditure or enter into any liability involving expenditure or transfer of money for investment or deposit from government accounts unless such expenditure has been sanctioned by the general or special orders of the government or any authority for which the powers. So basically this is what we are doing. For every expenditure, for every bill that is being signed by the drawing and disbursing officer, we are taking approval of the department, we are taking the sanctions, we are getting the sanction order signed, and then we are submitting the bills to the paying accounts. The next would be the mere inclusion of any item in the budget does not constitute an authority for incurring expenditure on the particular item. Prior specific sanction of the competent authority is necessary. This is also clear enough. the charge in respect of a single item of expenditure may not be split up so as to bring each part within the competence of this authority. Now, this is a very tricky proposition. I think this is, for instance, I mean, the non-recurring expenditure of the head of the department stands at around 2 lakhs. For minor repair works, I think 2 lakhs would be your limit of the sanctioning authority. Now what happens is, do you have a head called minor works? Is there a head of minor works? Anyways, what happens is our minor works must say, if you are supposed to make if you have a budget of 10 lakhs, after 10 lakh ko expenditure, actually it should be taken up to the minister. Minister should approve because he is the competent authority. But a lot of cases, what happens is that same expenditure is broken into 5 expenditures of 5 lakhs each, and then it is approved and sanctioned by the head of department, within whose competence it comes. So I think it should be the head of departments should also be convinced. They should be open enough to understanding the problems that are faced by the accounting personnel. It is our duty to bring this up, to write it, and see if they are still unwilling and they say no, 2 lakhs is for this building, 2 lakhs is for another building, that is their interpretation. So all we can do is we can bring it to their notice, and if they override us, we have no other options but to accept their authority as well. The charge in respect of a single item of expenditure cannot be split up as to bring each part within the competence of an authority to whom the powers of sanction have been delegated. I think a lot of times we can use our logic, our common sense, because a lot of things, what has happened is the Sikkim Financial Rules as it is, it's very old, and compliance with each and every nitty-gritty clause of the, I should not be saying this, but then operationally or functionally when you work with, because you work with your colleagues, you stay with your colleagues, most of your time is spent with your colleagues. Basically when you go home, you usually eating, you're bathing, you're sleeping. So I think more than your family also, you're spending time with your colleagues to maintain a cordial atmosphere. I think we have to be a little flexible in our interpretation, because we ourselves can understand that the rules are very old, and we need to keep up with times. If we can justify ourselves in front of the authorities, or in case of any, in front of the auditors, if our actions are justifiable, I think we should try to write it down and get the approvals accordingly. Standard of financial propriety. The principles on which emphasis is generally laid are: every officer is expected to exercise the same vigilance in respect of expenditure incurred from public money as a person of ordinary prudence would exercise in respect of expenditure of his own money. This is simple enough. The expenditure should be should not be more than what the occasion demands. The authority should exercise its power of sanctioning expenditure to pass an order which will be directly or indirectly to its own advantage. This is also clear enough. Expenditure from public money should not be incurred for the benefit of a particular person or a section of people unless a claim for the amount could be enforced in a court of law, or the expenditure is in pursuance of a recognized policy or custom. In any case, I think all expenditures that we are doing is with the approval of the government, without which we are not budging. We are not here to pass favors or do anybody any credit. So I think this is simple enough, and simple enough to live with as well. The amount of allowances granted to meet the expenditure of a particular type should be regulated, that allowances are not on the whole a source of profit to the recipients. The responsibility and accountability of each authority delegated with financial powers to to procure any item or service on government accounts is total and indivisible. Government expects that the authority concerned will have the public interest uppermost in its mind while making a procurement decision. So basically, we are functioning as the government. So our first and foremost priority would be the government. Even when it comes to payment, if there is a contractual payment and the money is not sufficient, for example, you have a payment of 200 rupees to make and the fund available with us is only 100 rupees. The first and foremost priority of us accounting personnel is to see that the statutory dues, the deductions, the receivables of the government are received first. For example, your TDS, your GST, other royalty payments, the interest of the finance department. After these are collected, then whatever remains is the payment that we can make to the recipient. So it is our duty to first actually collect government dues, despite what the recipient would say. He would say, please pay me first, and then you can pay the taxes as and when the funds are available at a later date. But that is not how it works. We have to be very stubborn on this point that government dues and receipts are first. The reason I say this is because all of us are government employees. Even our own salaries is dependent on government revenues. So instead of seeking to benefit the recipient, it is our moral duty to collect government revenue first. Wherever called for, the concerned authority must place on record in precise terms the considerations which weighed with it while taking the procurement decision. Controlling officer shall see that the total expenditure is kept within the limits of the authorized grant and spending it is in the public interest. He should be informed what has been spent from the grant and also its commitments and liabilities. There shall be adequate provisions for internal checks to prevent and detect errors of financial irregularity. I think there is already a lot of checks and balances when it comes to the account section, because we have the subordinate staff, then we have the drawing and disbursing officer, then we have the sanctioning authority. So I think we do not need to worry much about this point. Now the duties and regards with maintenance of accounts. Every subordinate authority shall personally be responsible for strict accuracy, completeness and timely dispatch in regards to preparation and rendering of accounts. Facts are certified, furnishing of information, books and other documents as demanded by the audit and not withholded. With regards to this third point of not withholding the documents, I think the account section is usually not guilty of this charge. It's usually the scheme in charges, the concerned officers who fail to provide the documents. Our books, for example, our cash books, our contingent audit registers, they are, I think, usually the first things that are produced to the auditing parties. Now the defalcations, losses, etc. Any loss or shortage of public money, departmental revenue or receipts, stamps, stores, etc. shall be immediately reported by the subordinate authority to the next higher authority, as well as the office of the AG and finance department. Concerned government servants shall be personally responsible for any loss due to negligence of this duty. So I think this weighs in a lot of responsibility. Any fraud is a criminal offense. So if there is mismanagement of stores, all these things should be brought to the notice of higher authorities, because the rules themselves have put a tremendous burden on the shoulders of the accounting personnel. A procedure for payment of money to the government account. Any person paying money into the bank shall present it with a challan. This we already know is prepared by the concerned officer. It is in the prescribed form showing distinctly the nature of payment, the person or government officer on whose account the payment is made, and all information necessary for the proper account classification of the credit. Separate challans shall be used for money credited to different heads of accounts. A lot of this has been is being specialized or is being how would we say it? It's collection of money instead of challan. For example, the power department, the water department, PHE department, they have been receiving money through online purposes. So this actually reduces the burden and work of the accounting personnel as well. Notification number 1, Finance Administration dated 17/5/2018 is the latest government order for crediting of government revenue, dues, etc. into banks to do away with, eradicate fake false challans. Withdrawal of money from government account. No money shall be drawn from the bank unless it is required for immediate disbursement, except by presentation of bills at the paying accounts office. This is clear enough. The claims by non-government employees for work done are submitted through the head of departments or other government offices under whom the work is done. General instructions regarding preparation of the forms of bills. Printed forms of bills to be used. All bills to be signed in ink and amount written in words and figures. All corrections and alterations in bill to be attested by full signature with date of DDOs. Erasures and overwriting to be avoided. The recording of correct and complete accounts classification. Charges against 2 or more heads should not be included in one bill. So if there is expenditure, suppose 100 rupees is being paid to a single person, but from there's 2 heads from where the payment is being made of 50 rupees each, what it says is we should be preparing 2 bills. Sanction order is to be enclosed for a claim under special order. This is routine work with which everybody is familiar. Specimen signature and other safeguard. Every government officer who is authorized to draw checks or sign countersigned bills payable at the paying accounts office shall send a specimen signature to the paying accounts office and bank. This is usually done when the concerned drawing and disbursing officer is being designated. There is a specimen, there's a set of around 36 or so signatures that go to all the banks and the other institutions. The specimen signature is to be approved by the finance department. For this, the name, the designation, the DDO code, PAN number, email ID and phone number, details of the officer recommended is to be forwarded to the finance department. And then from the finance department, it's sent to the other institutions. Stamps for receipts. Revenue stamps shall be fixed in respect of every receipt as proof of evidence in the court of law. Rupee 5 is to be deducted from the gross receipt of the above. Rupees 5,001 for both salary and contingent bills. This is notified by so and so, notification dated so and so. This is what we've been practicing already. We already, the 5 rupee stamps are in vogue, and then even for salaries, each and every person is deducting 5 rupees. Responsibility for money withdrawn. The disbursing officer has to satisfy not only himself but also the auditor that a claim which has been accepted is valid, that a voucher is complete proof of the payment which it supports, and that the account is correct in all respects. It is necessary that all accounts should be kept and details so fully recorded as to satisfy future inquiry. First payment of pay and allowance and issue of last pay certificate. For fresh appointment and re-employed government employees, the medical certificate of fitness shall be furnished to DDO in order to submit it to the pay and accounts office. On transfer of employee, the first bill shall be supported by the last pay certificate as prescribed. This is also routine work which I think is practiced in all offices. Also, the arrear payment on account of pay and allowance in the date of transfer shall be drawn from the new place of posting, for which non-payment of certificate is obtained from the DDO. the state government is actually a little flexible when it comes to the payment of the salaries. For example, if a person is transferred in the middle of the month, the 10th or the 15th, what we tend to do is we tend to give them salaries for that month, and then the LPC is issued. But then, you please keep it in mind when there is an officer being deputed to the central services, this is not accepted. You will have to give the salaries till the day that he functions within the office. Suppose a person has worked in with the judiciary till the 10th, you issue him LPC till the 10th, and from the 11th onwards, he receives his money from the central ministry where he is deputed. Actually, this makes it easier for us. For the sake of convenience, it's much easier to do it on a monthly basis than to break up salaries in the middle of a month. Instruction for handling cash checks. Every officer entrusted with the handling of cash checks shall see that cash books should be maintained in a prescribed manner. Cash books should be treated as important accounts records in the department. All monetary transactions should be entered in the cash book with date and time that they occur. Cash books should be closed regularly and completely checked. Verification of cash book in the cash balance in the cash book at the end of each month. An erasure of overwriting of an entry made in the cash book is strictly prohibited. The cash book should be bound in convenient volumes and it is machine numbered. The concerned officer should count the number of pages and record a certificate found on the first page of cash book. Each entry in the cash book should be concise. HOD, a head of office, should make a surprise physically verification of the cash book at least once a month and a record of certificate. With regards to the maintenance of cash balances, a lot of it has reduced after the recently, usually what used to happen was the money used to come to the cashier and then the salaries was disbursed. This has been done away with and all payments, usually what is now happening is the cash book, you receive the checks from the paying accounts, the same is disbursed to the concerned officer. So the maintenance of balance that is talked about in the SFR is not really relevant. But I think it is only easier for us and it takes us less time. It's better for us that whatever has happened, the financial modernization, integration with the banks, I think it is a big bonus to our service. Now the power of sanctions. The power of various authorities in the matter of sanctioning expenditure are given in Appendix 3, Part 1 and 2 and Appendix 3A. While specific delegations to certain HODs is contained in Appendix 4 of the SFR. We've all seen this in the final pages of the SFR, right? So it's pretty clear. Though it is a little outdated, there are items such as expenditures for the typewriter, which is, I think, not in use anymore. And a lot of places, the amount of sanctioning power is also very limited. But I hope that our seniors who are working on the amendment of the Sikkim Financial Rules will come up with something very soon and it becomes even easier for us to function better. The financial powers of the government which have been delegated to a subordinate authority shall vest in the finance department. This includes sanction of new schemes, relinquishment of revenue, etc. All the powers shall be exercised subject to budget provision. This is clear enough. All sanctions to expenditure shall indicate the details of the provision in the relevant grant. The sanctioning authorities shall see that public revenue should be spent only on legitimate expenditure. All sanction orders are communicated to the finance department, EG office and treasury. This is also clear enough. Now the reappropriation of funds. Reappropriation of funds is usually done if it is seen that there is a shortage of fund in the particular unit of grant during the financial year. While submitting the proposal to Finance Department for sanction, the concerned officer should see that savings is anticipated in the unit from where the fund is being reappropriated, no reappropriation from one grant to another. Fund is sanctioned by the competent authority, no reappropriation between funds kept under charge and voted expenditure. Similarly, no reappropriation funds between revenue and capital, no reappropriation of funds to meet expenditures on new service not contemplated in the budget. The amount to be reappropriated should not exceed the sanctioned amount, and the copy of the sanctioned letter is sent to the AG office and the treasury. So basically, when it comes to reappropriation, there are a few basic things that we should keep in mind. The expenditures of the judiciary is all charged. We don't have any component that is voted. It is voted.
High Court only.
Okay. So what it basically says is there should be reappropriation only between voted to voted or charged to charge. And then again, similarly for revenue expenditure cannot be taken to the capital head of expenditure, or provision given in the capital heads cannot be taken to the revenue expenditure. This is straightforward enough. And then with regards to reappropriation, I think the new system would be submission through the Pranali system. I think that is being done in this office. Sorry, through the RCO, yes. So, I mean, even though it hasn't become a full-fledged system till now, I think slowly we are moving in that direction. We, till the time that it is officially switched and all reappropriations are accepted in toto by the Finance Department through the Pranali system itself, it is still our responsibility to prepare the reappropriation in the reappropriation forms. I think we are pretty clear with how the reappropriation of expenditure works, right? We have prepared that. It's from the head, from where you're reappropriating, you show the budget head, you show the expenditure, you show the balances, and then the head to which it is proposed, the expenditure already made and the requirement therein. Settlement of grants. This is proposed when the amount provided in the sanctioned budget for any services found to be insufficient for the purpose of that year. Option under reappropriation is not available, or need has arisen for expenditure upon a new service not contemplated in the budget. So basically what it says is when there is a expenditure to be made which was not foreseen by the department, what we need to do is we need to seek budget head and funds through the supplementary demand for grants. Advance from contingency fund. This is done when there is need to incur unforeseen expenditure in excess of the sanctioned grant or on a new service not provided in the budget, and there is no time for voting the supplementary demand by the legislature. The procedure is given in Appendix 6 of SFR. Please note that there shall be no savings in the reappropriated unit, nor there shall be excess in the unit from where the fund has been reappropriated. So basically, I mean, there is a restriction of your operational flexibility when it comes to reappropriation of grants. Once a fund is reappropriated from a particular head, you cannot reappropriate, if there is a shortage in that head from where the savings was anticipated, you cannot pull in money from another head. I mean, once you have reappropriated money out of that budget head, that head itself becomes very inflexible. The other problem with reappropriation is again, once you reappropriate money to a particular head, for example, you don't have enough money on the office expenses, you reappropriate money from travel expenses to office expenses. But if you fail to make the expenditure under office expenses, you cannot surrender that to the finance department. You cannot report that. That will be something that comes up in your appropriation, annual appropriation accounts, and then you'll have to give suitable explanation to the AG's office as well as the Public Accounts Committee. Now grants in aid. Grants in aid are given to the local bodies, educational and other institutions, scholarships, cooperative bodies, etc., and are generally of a recurring and non-recurring nature. The sanction letters should be specify conditions that the institution receiving grant should be open for test check by the office of the AG. They should furnish a copy of the audited statements of its account and a copy of the constitution. Usually what happens is when we give grants in aid of a recurring nature, it is our duty to collect the audited financial statements as well as the utilization certificates from the institutions to whom we have given the grants. The problem arises because every year the finance department is after us, the accounting personnel in each department, to submit our adjustments of advances as well as the grants in aid. So it is very, very important, it is imperative that we seek the utilization certificates. अब हामीले त्यो पैसा दियो पुरा सक्यो भनेर चाहिँ it is, we have to stay a little alert, even if it is of a non-recurring nature, even if the advance is given for a single purpose or a single use, it is our responsibility to seek the utilization certificate. If it has been forwarded through another officer in another section, it is our duty to write to him within that financial year itself to collect the utilization certificate. It is, the reason I'm saying that is what usually happens is it takes a few years. Suppose you are given a grant in aid to a BDO or a panchayat. After a few years, the personnel is charged, is transferred, or a new person has come in his place, and they are very reluctant to take on the responsibility of signing the utilization certificate that for funds received by their predecessors. So we should keep this in mind, and we should be very alert. As soon as we disburse grants in aid, advances, grants in aid, sorry, not advances, it is, we should communicate in writing, even during disbursal, as well as we should follow it up in a timely manner to collect the utilization certificates. Unspent balances to be surrendered to the government has been taken into account in the sanctioning the subsequent grant in case the recurring grant to same institution. Utilization certificate should be furnished at the beginning of the financial year for grants released in the previous financial year. Rush of payments of these grants in March is avoided. Ideally, we should avoid, but it is very difficult. Stores. It applies generally to all the articles and materials purchased or otherwise acquired for the use of department, including not only expenditure and issuable articles in use or accumulated in a specific purpose, but also in articles of dead stock of the nature of plant, machinery, instruments, furniture, equipment, etc. Now the Rule 120 of SFR states all purchases of stores should be made in the most economical manner in accordance with the definite requirements of public revenue. Care should be taken not to purchase stores much in advance of actual requirement. Purchase orders should not be split up. As per government order, the purchase should be made from STCS. When we procure items from STCS or SIMPED, it actually becomes much easier for us to be answerable to the auditing authorities. There is usually a lot of pressure in the department that there are suppliers, we purchase from them. In such instances, the best way forward would be to tell those suppliers to, no, not just register. Usually what happens in departments is they use their lobbies, they serve concerned officers, and they tend to pressurize for direct issue of work orders, supply orders. But then what we need to tend to tell them is, for all supply of materials above 1 lakh, either it has to be tendered through a local deal, or the easier way around would be to get the procurement through SIMPED STCS. So what we can tell the supplier, if he is a person of influence within the office with whom it is difficult for us to fight or actually say this is not according to the rule, we can always say you procure the item, but then you procure it through STCS or SIMPED. You pay your 3% commission, it becomes easier for us also to comply with the rules, and it's easier for the officer giving the work to the concerned agents as well.
Sir,
Also,
we need to deduct income tax on that commission, sir? 3%
see,
commission.
of course, we need to get the PAN card of the SIMPED or STCS, and we need to deduct. That becomes the responsibility of the accounts officer.
At the rate of 2%.
2%. Yes. Correct. To maintain standard and quality, competitive rates and transparency, the participation of maximum number of tenders is imperative. So was again talking about some tender in the judiciary being tendered 7 times and there were only 2 participants. Or is anybody aware of that? In such cases, I think after the 3rd tender and there aren't enough participants, it is the way forward would actually be to build up the file and seek the concurrence of the finance department to issue the work order. Preference may be given to the manufacturer and agency holding the rate contract with DGS and D. I think this is also become clearer with the e-procurement system that is now being followed. The GEM portal for machineries, even for vehicles. So we tend to get much better rates at the reluctance and speed because the delivery take time. There's a lot of time for delivery. Delay in delivery, so I think there is a lot of pressure to use the other route, but then I think we should actually stress on procurement through GEM to save public money. For direct purchase or specific approval of the finance is to be obtained. This is again clear enough. Terms and conditions in the notice inviting tenders should cover everything so that there is no complications in future. Comparative statement of tenders quotations should be prepared and signed by members of the committee. With regards to this notice inviting tender, recently there was a seminar conducted by the Commercial Taxes Division, wherein they have given pro forma of what the requisites for notice inviting tenders. What tends to happen is we tend to scrutinize the applicants on the basis of their GST and their qualifications before the tender is even conducted. And what the Commercial Taxes Department is saying is their difficulty is a lot of people are taking GST numbers just for the purpose of filing tenders. And so to avoid that, what we should be doing is the GST details should be ideally collected after the tender procedure is complete and before the issue of the work orders. Comparative statement of tenders quotations should be prepared and signed by the members of the committee. This is again usual practice. E-procurement guidelines and procurement procedure are covered by the notifications dated so and so. Now for any works, the general principle is that the administrative approval is obtained from the competent authority. Sanction to incur expenditure has been obtained from the competent authority. Properly detailed design and estimate has been sanctioned. Fund to cover the charge has been provided. Any anticipated or actual savings on a sanctioned estimate or defined project should not withhold special authority or be agreed to carry out additional work not contemplated in the original estimate. So basically we should not carry out work more than what was already approved and budgeted. When works are given out on contract, the general principle laid down in Rule 27 shall be carefully borne in mind. Payment for all works done by the contractor or material purchase should be on basis of measurement recorded in the measurement books kept for the purpose. Measurement books should be considered as a very important accounts records, maintained very carefully and accurately, as these have to be produced as evidence in the court of law as and when required. So, a measurement book is usually a small book which is maintained by the engineers in the works department. They are usually submitted along with the bills to the account section, and then what the account section does is we check the propriety of payment, we see the deductions, and we propose the payments for pass orders on the measurement books, and then for the disbursements the vouchers are signed and the documentation is submitted to the paying accounts. So what it says is the measurement books are very important, just like the vouchers which are compiled and they are sent to the AG's office, which can act as a proof of execution of work. The measurement books are very, very important documents. It should actually be, due care should be taken by the accounting personnel, because when we send the measurement books for payments to the pay and accounts office, other people can be liberal with their responsibilities. They'll receive the measurement books, and then if that measurement book does not come back to the department, the engineering section usually are in a tussle with the account section that the MBs were sent to the accounts and the accounts lost it. So the proper maintenance of records in a file, when it was received by the pay and accounts office, when it was returned to the account section, and when it was returned from the account section to the engineering cell, it is vital that this movement of the MB is recorded. Now the contracts, the governor is made party to every contract of the government. The terms are precise and definite, standard forms should be adopted. If not, then legal and financial advice to be sought. No uncertain liability is to be entered without the previous approval of the government. Tenders are invited wherever practicable and advantageous. Financial status, performance, etc. of tenderers are taken into account. Suitable penal provisions against breach, non-fulfillment are kept. Taxes and duties payment are to be settled beforehand. This is something I stressed on earlier as well. Taxes and duties should be paid first. Security should be normally be taken. No prepayment of compensation without the approval of the law and finance department. Provision for safeguard of government properties. The interest of public exchequer should be taken for any relaxation of agreement. Provision for unconditional power of revocation and cancellation. Copies of contract and agreement should be sent to the Accountant General. Advances to government servants. An advance from the public fund shall not be granted to a government servant without a substantive appointment, and also subject to general or specific instructions as may be issued from time to time by the finance department. Personal advance, festival advance, granted once in a year. The rate of advance is 8,500. This can be, the recovery is done in 6 monthly installments. Recovery shall commence with the issue of pay from the month following which the sum was disbursed. No further drawal of advance unless the advance granted earlier has been fully recovered. So this advance actually can be taken during Dashera, before Losum, your Christmas, whichever festival is celebrated by the concerned personnel. For tours and advances, advances are to be approved by the financial advisor before sanctioning by the HOD. The financial advisor will take into account items like DA, fares, room rent, as per the rules to determine the quantum of advance. Normally 75% of the estimated expenditure is to be granted. All advance to be fully settled in the final TA bill of the journey actually performed. approved tour program by the competent authority, budget provision is available, AO, DDO shall be fully responsible for settlement of advance. Second advance shall not be sanctioned unless the previous one is settled. Adjustment of advance on completion of tour by the 31st of March, whichever is earlier. Right of government servant to TADA shall be forfeited or deemed to have been relinquished if the claim for it is not preferred within 1 year from the date of which the journey is completed. So this again is a very important point. All claims of tours should be settled within a year. Details should be entered in the advance register. Rule number 205 to 216 of the SFR, non-personal advance. Non-personal advance are generally advances given to STCS, SIMPET, Cooperative, Printing and Stationery Department and other government undertakings for purchase of tires, tubes, vehicles, batteries, stationaries, equipments, printing of books, and which are of contingent of nature. Again here I think the advances are sent along with the taxes. Taxes are paid along with the 50% advance. Here also the AO and DDO shall see that 50% of the estimated expenditure duly excluding the GST which is to be provided in full is proposed. Budget provision is available, sanction of the competent authority is obtained. Detail of advance is entered in the advance register and no further release of advance until previous advance is not settled. Things to discuss: maintenance of proper advance register. The advance register is maintained and signed by the drawing and disbursing officer. This is vital for the settlement. I mean, when the auditors come, they see your advance register, they see what is settled, what is not settled. So I think it is the responsibility of the drawing and disbursing officer to see that the records are kept in a proper manner. Details of advances drawn and its settlement are properly entered in the register. Periodical reconciliation of figures of advances drawn from both personal and non-personal office of the AG and Treasury. Certificate of reconciliation may be obtained from the office of the AG. LPC to be shown on settlement, LPC to show on settlement of advance, if any, during transfer. All advances to be settled before the retirement of the government servant. Revised guidelines for drawal of advance. Submission of detailed contingent bill, adjustment of advances. Outstanding figures of unsettled advance of judiciary as on date. There is one point of concern here. Usually with regards to the settlement of advances, we tend to get multiplicity of figures. There is one figure given by the finance department, there is another figure given by the AG's office. This actually stems from the problem of duality in function of the AG office. The auditors that come to department, they prepare your advance details based on the advance register produced to them. And then there is the book section in the AG's office that prepares your advance details based on the detailed abstract. There is the abstract contingent bill and the detailed contingent bills. So these are actually, they are different colors, right? I think one is pink in color, the other one is blue in color. And all settlements are usually blue in color. So it is imperative that we get these figures reconciled, or we take the figures from the book section as well when we go to reconcile the advance figures with the finance department. The figures given by the finance department usually are from the audit section of the AG's office, and they tend to be inflated. So the figures of the book section of the AG office also might be taken into consideration and reconciled before we head for the reconciliation meeting with the finance department. Please note that the non-submission of detailed account causes non-transparency in expenditure reporting system, as the money which were drawn in the government exchequer does not get properly accounted for as the purpose for which it was drawn cannot be vouched by the accounting and auditing authorities. Non-settlement also carries with it the risk of fraud and misappropriation of public funds, which has to be seriously viewed by the Office of the Accountant General Sikkim. Though, I mean, ideally we should be settling all advances. What I have seen in most departments, I don't know how it is in the judiciary, advances are pending for periods of 10s, 15s or even 20 years, and we have no clue how we are to settle it. Usually we are transferred in the department and then we see figures of 2005. And when you ask the concerned authorities, the concerned person has retired, and there is a lot of difficulties. I mean, whatever we can do, whatever documentation we can produce, it would be best if we can provide, we build up a file. But then what I have seen is, even when you build up a file, make a list of advances which could not be settled, which could not be traced, even when we proceed and we present it before the finance department, the finance department states their inability to what do you say, to overcome such advances or settle them because the AG office is already involved. So the AG, we have to make a representation to the AG office for relaxation of such advances, which is not granted. At least I have not seen such a relaxation granted by the AG's office. Now, with the destruction of office records connected with the accounts, no government record connected with accounts shall be destroyed except in accordance with the provisions of Appendix 10. So, Appendix 10 usually states when the vouchers can be destroyed, when the register can be destroyed. It tells the duration usually is from 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. So, if there is a lot of paperwork in the office, it cannot fit. We can cite such rules of the SFR to actually dispose of the old vouchers which are not required. Appendix 3A, maintenance and repairs of government vehicles. Now this again is, I think, something that keeps us very busy in the office. This is something that keeps us very, very busy. Most of our work tend to be repair of government vehicles. For repair in private garages, the limit of 30, there's a limit of 30,000 per annum. Should not be exceeded, and overall expenditure is within the ceiling limit as per Schedule 1 of SFR. The proposal on major repairs and replacement of tires tubes to be forwarded to SNT Transport Department for technical sanction. The major repairs shall be done in garage impaneled with the Transport Department. Comparative statements are required with lowest quotes. The final bills to be submitted by the lowest quoted garage, and the rate shall be verified by the SNT. For servicing of vehicle, it is to be done once in 4 months for non-touring vehicles and once in 3 months for touring vehicles. All expenditure details are to be entered in the relevant pages of the history register of the vehicle, and total cumulative expenditure in the repair section is checked. For purchase replacement of vehicles needs prior approval of the Finance Department, Home Department, CS and SCL. Sanction order enclosed along with the bill forwarded to TPO should show the date of purchase of vehicle, details of previous expenditure, present expenditure, cumulative expenditure, and ceiling limit. Now, with relation to the vehicles, not only is it something that keeps us busy, it tends to be a very personal issue. A lot of the officers tend to take it very personally when you tend to say the ceiling limit has been crossed, or the expenditure is more than what is entitled. So our way around it would be, instead of writing a negative note saying that the expenditure is above the limits or such, the way around it would be to propose it in such a way with good words, instead of saying your expenditure is above the ceiling limit, you can always say, the ceiling limit is so and so, and to incur this expenditure which seems necessary to make the vehicle functional, we may seek the concurrence of the finance department. So please share that burden with your fraternity, with your fellow officers and your support people at the finance department. Now the objective of Pranali. To provide real-time picture of expenditures and income of the government, to implement digital mode of billing and processing of expenditure, to implement the collection of taxes and other receipts through e-mode public-friendly platform, to exchange the financial data of the state in digital and real time with the Government of India and other institutions as required, to provide real-time statistics of state finances with features of corrective and predictive analysis. For its implementation, designation of resource controlling officer, preferably officers from SFAS by HOD, designation of nodal officers for signing orders relating to all types of financial sanction. The nodal officers shall be allotted unique codes of identification in SIFMS version 2.0, and all sanction orders must bear this code with the name, seal and signature. Usually when there is a change in the procedure of work, there tends to be a little bit of a resistance. So even for the case of Pranali, when it initially came, there was a resistance that we are already doing so much paperwork, now we are doing duplicacy of the same work on the web portal. But I think eventually when we overcome these hurdles, it has made a lot of things simpler for us. For the example, the preparation of nominal roll. It used to be a very hectic task when you prepare that with Excel, and then there was a lot of responsibility. Now all this is being streamlined, and the next step forward for Pranali would probably be collection of revenue. That would again reduce the burden of preparation of challans, collection of revenues, reconciliation of revenues. So I think we are moving forward in the right direction as the world moves towards digitization. We have no option but to keep up pace. Rule 54 of the SFR. After the existing entries of the following should be inserted. On assuming the charge of HOD on transfer deputation from other departments, a copy of the handing and taking over the charge of the HOD must be forwarded to the finance department. Appendix 1. Head of department, a new clause inserted is Registrar General, High Court of Sikkim. Appendix 4. Delegation of power, a new clause inserted are the refund of revenue and refund of GST. Drawal of conveyance allowance, enhancement of rate from 8,000 to 12,000, and other conditions may be seen in so and so notifications. I shall be sharing this PowerPoint presentation with everybody, so it becomes easier for you when somebody from the department actually asks you which notification number, where to get the notifications. There's an amendment to the Sikkim TA rules as well. There's issue of certificate through the digital platform, which is again office order number 3. Now the drawing and disbursing officer means drawing and disbursing officer is a gazetted officer declared as such by the finance department on the recommendation of the head of department to draw bills and to make payments on behalf of the state government. The drawing and disbursing officer in the judiciary is an accounts officer, or there are other officers in the other offices? Yes, sir. Okay.
So in case of district, judges are also
Disbursing officers. Okay. So there is a little bit of difficulty in explaining things to them in the districts? Yes. Something. So that comes to the head office, and I think the officers here have to convince them how it works. Responsibilities of the DDOs to initially examine the claims submitted to him, draw the claims in the forms prescribed in the government, state government accounts, receipt and payment rules and other rules concerning the claim,
ensure that the budget provision exists for payment of that claim, submit the bills to this accredited to pay and accounts office, receive payments from pay and accounts office through checks, arrange payments to claimant concerned either by cash, by encashing the check, or by handing over the check itself. Responsible for maintenance of initial and subsidiary accounts, records like each cash book, stock and stores accounts, etc. In other words, the DDO is personally responsible for amount drawn on a bill against by him until he has paid it to the correct claimant and he has obtained a legally valid acquittance. Correct maintenance and timely rendition of accounts or returns in respect of public funds or stores handled to the office. Register to be maintained by the drawing and disbursing officer. It is said maintained by the drawing and disbursing officer, but then it is usually the staff that are responsible. But then it is the duty of the staff maintaining the records to actually get them initialed and signed in a timely and periodic manner, so that there is no problem when in case of transfers or in case of audit. So let's go through the documents. Retention period of documents. Salary audit register is for 35 years. Bill register has to be maintained for 5 years or 1 year after the completion of audit, whichever is earlier. Cash book has to be maintained till 20 years. Contingent bill register, 3 years or 1 year from the completion of audit, whichever is earlier. Advance register, 3 years after all the advances recorded in the register have been fully recovered. So I think since we have advances from 2000 itself, this becomes a big hindrance for us to destroy the advance register. Now the stock register can be disposed of after 5 years or 1 year after the completion of the audit, whichever is later. The drawing and disbursing officer shall see that before forwarding the bill to the pay accounts office, the following have been complied with. The claim is made in the prescribed form. Entries made in the respective register. Progress of expenditure under each head is watched. The progressive expenditure as it is already cumulative in the case of contingent audit register. So it is quite easy for the concerned personnel as well as the officer. Sanction order is complete in all respects. Account classification is correct. Arithmetical calculation is correct. Pay details are correct. Deductions to be made are done. Supporting documents are attached. Proper DDO code is mentioned on the bill. On receiving the check from the paid accounts, check number, voucher number, date and amount entries are made in the cash book, made in the bill register, made in the advance register. If it is drawal of advance, adjustment of advance made in the duplicate form. Then checks are dispersed to the concerned payees and their acknowledgement received obtained. Next, paid vouchers are compiled and forwarded, and the record section for safe keeping of these vouchers as these are subject to audit scrutiny, vigilance, etc. Other important responsibility of the DPOs. Reconciliation of accounts from his office of the Pay and Accounts Office and the Accounting General Sikkim. Any discrepancy seen are attended promptly during reconciliation process so that the final booking of accounts is correct in all respects. Timely submission of monthly accounts of revenue and expenditure to the finance department. The DDO shall be fully responsible for settlement of advance drawn. No second advance is released unless the previous one is settled. Utilization certificate is obtained for release of granting aid, if any. While submitting the pay bill, the last pay certificate is enclosed for transfer of employees, and fitness certificate in the case of the first bill of the employee. The objection raised by the Pay and Accounts Office is promptly attended. proper classification of accounts as per the estimate of receipts in case of revenue deposits. Other important responsibilities of the DDOs. Entries on account of purchase of items like stationery, equipment, etc. are made in the stock register kept by the department and also in the asset register. Entries on account of repair, servicing, purchase of tires, fuels, batteries, etc. are made in the properly maintained in the history register of the vehicle. We shall see that prior administrative approval and technical sanction, if any, is to be obtained before the bill is placed for financial sanction. For general information, the DDO code is 6-digit, demand number, headquarter, and the serial number. The first 2 digits represents the demand number. The middle 2 is for the head or the districts, and then the final one is the number of budget heads. So the DDO code is assigned serially. The head of the department, the government servants declared to be such by the government. A list of officers declared to be the head of department for the purpose of these rules is contained in Appendix 1 SFR. Duties and responsibilities of the head of department. Be responsible and accountable for financial management of this department. Ensure that the public fund appropriated to the department are used for the purpose for which they are meant. To be responsible for effective, efficient, economical and transparent use of the resources of the department and for achieving the stated project objectives of the department while complying with performance standards. To appear before the Committee on Public Account and any other legislative committee for examination. To review and monitor regularly the performance and program of projects assigned to the department and to determine whether the stated objectives are being achieved or not. The duties and responsibilities of the head of the departments. It is his responsibility to be for preparation of expenditure and other statements relating to the department as required by regulation, guidelines and directives issued by the finance department. To ensure that his department maintains full and proper records of financial transactions and adopts systems and procedures that will at all times afford internal control. To ensure that his department follows the government procurement procedure for execution of works, as well as for procurement of services and supplies and its implementation in a fair, equitable, transparent, competitive and cost-effective manner. To take effective and appropriate steps to ensure his department collects all money due to the government and to avoid unauthorized, irregular and wasteful expenditure. Now the power of sanctions. The power of various authorities in the matter of sanctioning expenditure. The financial power of the government which have not been delegated to a subordinate authority shall rest in the finance department. So any expenditure for which the power of sanctions are not granted through the SFR, through the appendix given in the SFR, are to be forwarded to the finance department for their concurrence. Power specified in Appendix 3 and Appendix 3A of the SFR for incurring contingent expenditure, including expenditure on the purchase of stores. A specific delegation made in the to certain heads of department and others is contained in Appendix 4. All these are appendixes that are found at the last pages of the SFR. All these powers shall be exercised subject to budget provision. Appendix 3 Part 1, Contingent expenditure and miscellaneous expenditure. Residential and non-residential building, rents, electricity, water, petty repairs, purchase and repairs of furniture, computers, office furniture, etc. Other items, uniforms, stationery, printing. Part 2 contains the contingent expenditure. Recurring expenditure not covered under 1. The head of department has an power of authorizing 1 lakh payment. Chief Secretary has power of 4 lakhs. For non-recurring expenditure which is not covered by the above appendixes, the head of department can make expenditure up to 2 lakhs and the Chief Secretary up to 7 lakhs. Appendix 4, delegation of powers to certain heads of departments and subordinate authorities. All sanctions to expenditure shall indicate the details of the provision in the relevant grant or appropriation from where the expenditure is to be met. This is contained in Rule 52 to 69 of the SFR. Any proposal outside the delegated financial powers will be, after due processing by the respective department, to be referred to the finance department with the recommendation of the HOD with the following information. Budget provision on account of expenditure so far proposed, expenditure so far incurred, expenditure involved in the present proposal, balance of funds provided in the budget. Rule 60 of the according to Rule 60 of the SFR, please note that the proposals should be examined by the accounts officer posted in the department before they are sent to the planning and finance department. Now this is again a grey area. What tends to happen in the office is a lot of proposals seem to be approved and sanctioned, and then they are sent to the account section. And then we come in a difficulty. There's a dilemma. The sanction is of the competent authority, but as soon as the budget head has not been included, as soon as the file has not been routed through the department, it is our prerogative to write on the file that the rule is being breached. The Rule 99 of SFR of the file not being routed through the accounts department. It is a duty to assert our powers, because if we let the administrative powers, administrative authorities to take away the financial powers granted to the accounting personnel, it becomes a very difficult proposition for us to work in the office. So I think we should take up the case, we should take up the issue that in case of any proposal that comes through the administrative section, which has been approved and which has been sanctioned, without the file being routed to the account section, please route the file again to the administrative section saying that such so and so rules has been breached and the proposal is being resubmitted for approval and sanction. For reappropriation of funds, we have to see Rule 85 of the SFR. It contains the format as well. For supplementary grants, it is Rule 86 of SFR. For advance from the contingency fund, it is Rule 87 of SFR. To have sound financial management, the head of the department and drawing and disbursing officers should see that all revenue receipts and money that are transferred, that are to be assessed and promptly credited to the government account. The credit shall be as per the proper accounts classification under estimates of receipts. Preparation of monthly accounts for revenue and expenditure and analysis of which will help the controlling officer to be in a position to estimate the likelihood of savings and excesses over grants and appropriation. Reconciliation of accounts with Office of Paid Accounts and the AG of Sikkim for both revenue and expenditure so that final accounts of the department is correct. Rush of expenditure at the closing of the month of the financial year is to be avoided. Anticipated savings to be surrendered. Submission of detailed contingent bill against the advance contingent bill. Budget should be more realistic and cases of persistent non-utilization of funds, excessive provision of funds should be avoided. Payment of advances on the last day, month of any financial year to be avoided to avoid the lapse of budgetary provision is highly irregular. Sound internal financial reporting system based on the compliance with financial rules is one of the attributes of good governance. Utilization certificate on release of grants in aid are submitted. Any tendered works are completed on schedule so that there is no cash overrun of the project. To have sound financial management, the head of the department and drawing and disbursing officers shall see that the purchase of computers and accessories is as per the guidelines issued by the Department of IT and the rates verified by the concerned department. The purchase of reserved items are from the cooperative, SIMPED, SCCS, Directorate of Handlooms and Handicrafts, and other government undertakings as per the instructions of the government. For open competitive tenders, wide publicity is given in the leading newspapers through Department of IPR, so that minimum of 3 bids are obtained and the rates claimed are competitive without compromising on quality. The printing works are to be given in the Department of Printing and Stationery, and the rates on the printing of books, etc. is to be verified by the IPR department. Audit paras, inspector reports, CAG reports, etc. are to be given topmost priority and attended to personally. So that is the end of the presentation. Thank you very much, and I think we'll have an interactive session, or based on the SFR we can have a, what time is it? It's 12. So I think we'll break for lunch, and after lunch we can have an interactive sessions where we can talk about the practical issues that we have faced in the office and the difficulties that we can all enlighten each other with our knowledge. Thank you. Interactive session. So any questions whatsoever? At the back of your mind, हामीले अहिले एसएफआर को जे कुरा गर्यौं त्यो विषय लिएर नभए तपाईको त्यो बाहेक पनि तपाईको डे टु डे फंक्शनिङमा केही प्रश्नहरु छ भने it would be this would be the opportune moment to address all of that.
When we purchase certain things like the Xerox machine, and while servicing of those machines and all, there is a rule. I have heard that there is a rule that the authorized dealer can issue this amount.
Okay.
But then I have not got the rule as far. So I samajhai the rule.
For servicing of the Xerox machine.
Yes, sir. Also the purchase and servicing and other things.
I know. Tabako purchase the if it is a very big Xerox machine, there's one thing you can procure them through tabako the GEM portal. Right? So that takes a lot of time. The other way around it would be the authorized dealers are also usually tabale authorized dealers ko bada गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ के हुन्छ भने you will not be able to get the competitive rates. हैन? But then if it is of a amount where you think अब यता सर्ट डेमा अघि भन्नुहुँदै थियो कि मार्केट रेट भन्दा सिम्पेडको रेटहरु भन्दा तपाईले कम्तीमा पाउनु भयो भने you are within your right to move a proposal and seek the approval of the competent authority नि किनभने बेसिकली अब अघि मैले जे भने तपाईको everything should be logical, it should be justifiable, and if there is such a big difference between the prices you're paying through the market or through the supply authorized dealer, तपाईं त्यो रुल खोजि नबस्नु भन्दा पनि you can build up your proposal in such a manner and then you can present it to the competent authority. More questions please. Swapna atin अब त session है.
Sir, regarding your
हजुर
vehicle selling limit, sir.
हजुर
अब हाम्रो as per rule त सर भन्नुभएको छ हाम्रो up to बोलेरो सम्म मात्रै छ सर.
हजुर
सेलिङ लिमिट पनि as per त्यहीमा बनाएको छ सर.
हजुर
अब अहिलेको गाडीहरुमा सर इनोभाहरुमा त त्यो within the selling limit
doesn't make sense.
हजुर सर.
That is what we are far behind.
सर त्यसमा चाहिँ के गर्नु सकिन्छ?
हैन अब सक्दो त we will also have to try to facilitate and be helpful with the तपाईले कन्डिसन बुझिसक्नु भएको छ. अब त्यो बोलेरो तपाईँको 8 लाखको गाडीको रेटले चाहिँ तपाईँको त्यो इनोभा 25 लाखको गाडी बनाउनु खोज्दा त त्यो पुग्ने पनि होइन हो। अन्त 30 lakhs अब युजली नयाँ हुँदा त तपाईँलाई प्रब्लम छैन, किनभने फर्स्ट फ्यु इयर्स एज इट इज मेन्टेनेन्स कस्ट बेसी हुँदैन। त्यहाँदेखि अब तपाईँको त्यो जुन चाहिँ हाम्रो उयो छ तपाईँको सिलिङ लिमिट क्रस हुँदैछ भने एकदम राम्रो प्रकारले यो यतिको गाडी यति साल भएको भनेर प्रपोजल राम्रो बनाएर वी क्यान सिक द कन्करेन्स। तपाईँ कन्सर्न अफिसरलाई पनि भनिदिनुहोस्, सानो सानो चुपुर रिपेयर त तपाईँको 20-30 हजारको रनिङ मेन्टेनेन्स त गर्नु सकिन्छ, तर तपाईँको मेजर रिपेयर्सहरूको हुँदाखेरि हाम्रो रुल्स यस्तो छ भनेर अब उनीहरूले पनि त पोजिटिभली नै लिन्छ नि तपाईँले भनेको कुरा त। वी टेक दि तपाईँको के अरे इन्सपेक्सन रिपोर्ट अफ दि एसएनटी, त्यसको बेसिसमा तपाईँले कम्पेरेटिभ कोटेसन कल गरेर कम्पेरेटिभ रेट बनाउनु भयो। त्यहाँदेखि त्यो रेट बनाइसकेर अप्रुभल लिएर त्यहाँदेखि त्यति बेला कोट गरिदिनुहोस् सिलिङ लिमिट यति छ, यो भेहिकल त त्यो तपाईँको उयसमा पनि छैन, लिस्टमा पनि छैन। अन्त इन दिस केस वी मे काइन्डली सिक द कन्करेन्स अफ द फाइनेन्स डिपार्टमेन्ट भन्दा माथि फाइनेन्स डिपार्टमेन्टले पनि नाइभ त भन्दैन नि, उहाँहरू पनि कोसिसमै छ कि यो तपाईँको रिभिजन चाहिँ गर्ने, एसएफआर रिभिजन गर्ने भनेर देयर इज अ कमिटी, दे हेभ बिन वर्किङ अन इट फर द last 1 year, but they are just unable to tie up the loose ends. I'm sure within this year or the next financial year, we will get a new Sikkim Financial Rules, which would even solve that problem. In the meanwhile, we can process accordingly.
So your maintenance will be long term, sir?
No, sir. अब खासै देख्दाखेरि चाहिँ नहुनु पर्ने, तर अब द्याट इज अगेन अ भेरी ग्रे एरिया। अब तपाईँ एउटा त्यो सप्लायरहरू हुन्छ नि जसले चाहिँ त्यो गाडी बनाउँछ, तिनीहरूले चाहिँ जतिको पनि रेट माथिको भेरिफाई
होइन सर, जुन चाहिँ मतलब कम्पनीबाटै आउँछ नि सर, जस्तै सर कम्पनीबाटै आउँछ।
हजुर,
जस्तै इनोभाको हामी इनोभामै पठायो भने,
हजुर,
टोयोटामै पठायो भने
हजुर,
लाइक रेट भेरिफिकेसन
अब पठाउनु पर्यो, रुल अनुसार त हामीले पठाउनै पर्यो हो। अन्त यहाँ त सबै रेकर्ड भइरहेछ, खुलै बोलिहाल्नु पनि भयो। सक्दो चाहिँ पठाउनु भएकै राम्रो हो, तर 10,000 सम्म परेन।
सर के हुन्छ भने कोही बेला हामीले जस्तै फाइनेन्स पठाउनुपर्छ या कोही बेला आफ्नो फाइल मतलब अफिसियल फाइल चाहिँ कोही बेला उयो के भन्छ सरी एसएनडी पठाउनुपर्छ उयो कन्फरेन्सको लागि, कोही बेला उयो मेडिकलको लागि उयो पठाउनुपर्छ। कोही बेला यस्तो हुन्छ कि जसमा चाहिँ हामीले अब नचाहेर पनि रुलको एगेन्स्टमा गएर हामीले फाइललाई फरवर्ड गर्नुपर्ने हुन्छ। अब उता गएर पनि उनीहरूले अब मिन्स केही अब युज गरेर चाहिँ आफ्नो ओन मिन्स युज गरेर त्यसलाई कन्करेन्ट गराउँछ, गरेर ल्याउँछ। त्यसको बादमा गएर चाहिँ जब अडिट आउँछ, अडिट आएर चाहिँ त्यसमा हाम्रो प्रब्लम हामीले गरेको गल्ती देख्छ कि मतलब
होइन, तपाईँ कन्करेन्स भइसकेको फाइलमा त तपाईँ निश्चिन्त बस्नुहोस् न, त्यो तपाईँको हेडेकै होइन। कन्करेन्स गरिसकेपछि एन्टायर रेस्पोन्सिबिलिटी इज सोल्डर्ड बाई दि कन्करिङ अथोरिटी। अन्त त्यही भनेको अघि कतिवटा हाम्रो रुल्सले भ्याउँदैन भने पनि फाइल पठाउनुहोस्, कन्करेन्स सिक गर्नुहोस् होइन। अलिकति टाइम बेसी लाग्छ, माथि फाइनेन्स अप्रोच गर्नु पऱ्यो, फाइनेन्सले पनि अब त्यो पर्सनली अप्रोच गऱ्यो भने चाहिँ उनीहरूले कन्करेन्स गरिदिन्छ। त्यस्तै फाइल त त्यो तपाईँले रुटिन पठाउनु भयो भने त उनीहरूले पनि साह्रो पोजिटिभली त लिन्छ जस्तो लागेन हो। अनि सो फाइनेन्सले कन्फरेन्स गर्यो, फाइल प्लानिङ फाइनेन्स रुट भएको छ भने त तपाईँ ढुक्कै भएर बस्दा भइगयो नि। हामी इन्टरेक्टिभ सेसन 1 बजीदेखि 2 बजी सेड्युल भएको रहेछ। 10 मिनट सुरु छिटो गर्दा त यिनीहरू सक्यो जस्तो।
Sir, regarding preparation of the areas, just the areas, other areas. So for that, हामीले directly bill बनाएर proceed गर्दा हुन्छ कि
एकदम
हुन्छ नि सर?
फेरि स्याङ्सन चाहिँदैन, फेरि अप्रुभल चाहिँदैन।
चाहिँदैन केही पनि।
डिए अप्रुभ भएर यहाँ सरसित पनि अघि त्यो कुरा हुँदै थियो।
डिए जब अप्रुभ भएको छ, गभर्मेन्टले अप्रुभ गरेर दिइसकेको हुन्छ, तपाईँको रिभिजन पनि तपाईँको गभर्मेन्टले अप्रुभ गरेर अर्डर निकालेको हुन्छ डिओपीले, नभए यहाँ अफिसमै पनि सबअर्डिनेट स्टाफको एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिभ अप्रुभल पाइसकेको हुन्छ। त्यसको लागि तपाईँले फेरि स्याङ्सन लिनु जरुरी छैन। तपाईँहरूको यता अफिस कतिवटा छुट्टाएको छ? 4 districts, 6 districts होला सर? 6 districts and head office. So 7?
सब डिभिजनहरू पनि छ, रामपुर आउने,
हजुर
इस्टमा रामपुर आउने, पाक्योङ,
हजुर
अन्त गान्तोक भयो, मङ्गनमा मङ्गन भयो, चुङथाङ भयो, सब डिभिजन छ।
भनेपछि डिडिओ 10-15 जना पो रहेछ यहाँ त।
अहिले चाहिँ रनिङ चाहिँ एउटाले ह्यान्डल गर्दैछ,
हजुर
आफ्नो आफ्नो बजेट उयो बनाइसक्यो, प्लान आफ्नो।
ओके। No further questions? Then we'll wrap up for the day. Thank you very much.